Over the past several years, relations between the U.S. and Turkey have deteriorated amid deep divisions over which forces to support in Syria's civil war and the fight against ISIS. The U.S. backs a Kurdish force there, known as the YPG, but Turkey considers it a branch of the PKK, militant Turkish Kurds that both Ankara and Washington consider terrorists. Right now, the YPG controls the city of Manbij. Another flashpoint. Turkish plans to buy both anti-aircraft missiles from Russia and the American F-35 stealth fighter jet. U.S. officials are afraid the F-35 secret technology will be shared with the Russians. These were some of the items on the agenda when Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu met this morning with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Right afterward, Judy Woodruff sat down with the foreign minister and began by asking him about that sharp disagreement over America's backing of the Syrian Kurds.
It was a big mistake that U.S. preferred to work with a terrorist organization because U.S. Admits that YPG is the offshoot of PKK in Syria. Turkey itself actually eliminated more than 3,000 Daesh elements through Operation Euphrates Shields. We could have easily done this together with our allies. We didn't need this terrorist organization. It has become also big trouble for United States, and it also affected our bilateral relations very badly. And also it increased anti-American sentiments in Turkey and elsewhere.
When will the YPG be gone from Manbij?
In months, I can say. In not 1 year, but in some months.
I don't know if you discussed it today, but another issue between the U.S. and Turkey recently has been Turkey's desire to buy the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter jets. There's been, as you know, opposition in the Congress for a number of reasons, including the fact that Turkey has said it wants to buy Russian surface-to-air missile systems. Did you discuss it with Secretary Pompeo?
Yes, we discussed all these issues as well. First of all, it is not a desire or Turkey's desire. It is a deal. It is an agreement. It is a multi-party program. And we have been in that program, including some joint production of the parts of F-35s in Turkey. So Turkey has been paying the installments on time, on due time, and Turkey have met all the requirements. But you cannot cancel this deal because of S-400s that we are buying. It is totally different issue. That is the air defense system. We have had urgent needs. We had to buy air defense system. In the last 10 years, we tried to buy from United States, which is our ally, but it didn't work. US couldn't sell us Patriot batteries. But in this case, I have to protect my airspace, and I had to buy from somebody.
But right now, the Congress is saying at this point that the US will not sell the F-35 to Turkey, that there are too many problems between the two countries. So if Turkey has to choose between working with the US, working with NATO, or working with Russia, which will it be?
Why do I have to choose between? I don't have to choose between two sides or two countries. The countries like Turkey in such a geopolitical situation and shouldn't actually ask to choose between this country or that country. We have good relations with Russia, but US is our strategic ally. And my good relations or my cooperation with Russia is not an alternative. And we are a member of NATO, we are a member of OSCE, we are a member of Council of Europe, and we have been balancing our foreign policy, but nobody has the right to ask Turkey to choose between any countries or any sides.
Does your government now consider Russia as close a friend as it does the United States?
Well, we have different relations, I can say. I cannot make such a comparison. And we have good relations with Russia. We disagree on Russia on many issues like Crimea and Black Sea, and since we are NATO allies as well. And we see, even though we are cooperating Russia on Syria, like through Astana process, which has been a very actually helpful process to consolidate the ceasefire and de-escalation zone, even though there have been some violations. But we disagree with Russia on certain issues like Assad regime. They support the regime, we don't. And US is our strategic ally, but US supported YPG, PKK terrorist organization, which is a big threat to us.
Relations between the U.S. and Turkey have been more strained since the coup attempt in 2016. You and others in your government, including President Erdogan, have said Western countries, including the U.S., backed the coup. Is it your position today that the United States was backing the coup attempt against your president?
We never said that U.S. supported the attempted coup in Turkey. Yes, there is a public opinion in Turkey since this terrorists, and there are many others that we requested from the United States to extradite them, are still here and they have not been extradited. It's fueling the anti-American sentiments. And
Mr. Gulen.
FETÖ, yeah. And also we officially requested from the United States to extradite him. Nothing happened.
You talked about the perceptions of the Turkish people of the United States and the West. On the other hand, the U.S. looks at Turkey and sees over 100,000 arrests, thousands of people put in jail or in prison, journalists removed from their jobs, and the U.S. perception on the part of many in this country is that Turkey is cracking down beyond what was truly the cause of the coup attempt, and has basically locked up a lot of civil servants in your country. I mentioned journalists and others. That you're moving more toward an authoritarian system.
Not at all.
These elections coming, it'll be even more so.
We are committed to democracy, and Turkish people cannot tolerate any anti-democratic policies. And it is Erdogan, President Erdogan, and his party that have reformed Turkey tremendously. And this reform process has been defined in the United States and in Europe as silent revolution in Turkey. Okay? If you look at the legislations and the reform that we made, there is no step back.
Do you still welcome criticism from journalists?
What do you mean? Don't you read the media outlets in Turkey? It's not only criticism. Every day they are attacking me, they are attacking president. There are many media outlets and TV channels very, very strongly criticizing us. This is democracy. Look, before we reform Turkey, no journalist can criticize anybody. Not journalists or anybody can attack each other. Of course, if you are offended, if you think that you are offended, you can go to the judiciary. That is different. But there is a freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, freedom of journalism in Turkey, and we brought all these freedoms to Turkey.
Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu, thank you very much for talking with us.
Thank you.